In a glittering Dubai skyscraper, billionaire CEO Mr. Grant prepared to close the biggest deal of his life, a $200 million contract with Sheikh Omar. The boardroom shimmered with gold, glass, and tension. But just before the meeting began, the Arab translator rushed in nervously and suddenly collapsed, clutching his chest. The CEO's confidence shattered. "What do you mean he's gone?" Grant barked at his assistant. Panic spread. Without a translator, the deal was doomed. Amira down the hall unnoticed Amira, a quiet black maid polishing the marble floor, paused, her eyes reflecting both empathy and resolve. Mr. Grant's temper boiled. "Get me anyone who speaks Arabic," he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. His elite team scrambled, phones out, voices trembling. But every translator in the city was booked. Sheikh Omar and his delegation were already stepping off the private elevator, flowing white robes and calm dignity marking their entrance. "Ebrick, sir, we can delay the meeting," whispered his assistant. "A delay? Do you have any ideas?" Grant snapped, tugging at his cufflinks nervously. Amira, standing silently in the corner with her cleaning cart, lowered her eyes. She remembered every word the sheikh had said earlier in Arabic while she was mopping, and she understood all of it. But speaking up, risking her job in front of these powerful men, her heart pounded. Still, something in her refused to stay silent. As the meeting began, tension filled the air. Sheikh Omar spoke in deep, steady Arabic, his words rich with formality, layered meanings, and subtle tests of respect. The CEO, clueless, kept smiling and nodding like a fool, while his team frantically flipped through translation apps that only made things worse. The sheikh's advisor, frowned. "Does no one here understand us?" Grant's face went pale. Yes, of course, we're just waiting for..." That's when Amira's voice cut through the chaos. Calm, clear, perfect Arabic. "If I may, sir, Sheikh Omar said he appreciates the hospitality, but he would prefer we discuss the logistics before signing anything." Everyone froze. The room turned silent. Even the sheikh looked stunned. Mr. Grant turned slowly toward the maid, disbelief on his face. You speak Arabic?" Amira met his eyes steadily. "Yes, sir. Among other languages." The sheikh's eyebrows lifted with genuine interest. "Mashallah, your Arabic is flawless," he said, his deep voice carrying both surprise and respect. Amira lowered her eyes modestly. "Thank you, Your Excellency. My father was a linguistics professor before..." She paused softly. "Before we moved here." Mr. Grant swallowed hard, trying to mask his embarrassment. "Amira, you should have told me you could translate." She turned to him calmly. "Sir, you never asked. You only told me to keep the floor clean." A hush fell over the boardroom. Even the other executives avoided eye contact, shame crawling up their faces. Sheikh Omar leaned back in his chair, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "It seems wisdom and knowledge are not always dressed in silk suits." Mr. Grant forced a laugh, his face flushed red. Of course. Well, Amira, please continue." And just like that, the power in the room shifted. Amira began translating fluently, her voice steady, confident, and filled with grace. Every word flowed effortlessly between Arabic, English, and even a few phrases in French when technical terms arose. The sheikh watched her, utterly captivated. "You have the gift of tongues, young lady," he said warmly. "Where did you study?" Amira smiled faintly. "At the University of Khartoum, sir. Before the war forced us to leave, my mother worked as a translator for the embassy." Mr. Grant blinked rapidly. "Wait, you're telling me you're qualified? You could have been working in administration this whole time?" Amira kept her tone composed. "Sir, when I applied, your HR manager said, 'We don't hire cleaners with accents.'" A stunned silence blanketed the room. The sheikh's gaze darkened, not in anger at her, but at the arrogance of those around her. He turned to Mr. Grant and said in calm, measured Arabic, "You judged a diamond by the dust on its surface." Mr. Grant shifted uncomfortably. "Sheikh Omar, I didn't know." But Omar raised his hand, silencing him. "You didn't care to know." The sheikh's voice echoed through the marble hall, calm yet sharp enough to cut through pride. "Tell me, Mr. Grant," he said, "how many others in your company have you buried under your prejudice?" Mr. Grant stammered, It wasn't like that, Sheikh. We didn't think." "Brooker, that's the problem," Omar interrupted, his tone firm but dignified. "You didn't think. You saw her skin, her uniform, and assumed her worth." Amira stood quietly beside them, hands clasped in front of her, her humility contrasting the tension in the air. The Sheikh looked at her and said gently, "Miss Amira, you have more grace than the people who command entire floors here. Would you like to work for me instead?" Ebritha, the entire boardroom gasped. Abra said. Amira blinked in disbelief. "Work for you, sir?" "Yes," Omar said. "As my personal translator. The position is yours, if you'll accept." Abra from Mr. Grant's face drained of color. "Sheikh Omar, you can't just—" Omar turned his piercing gaze toward him. "I can, and I just did," the other executives whispered among themselves, realizing that the same woman they ignored daily had just been chosen by one of the richest men in the world. Amira swallowed hard, emotion welling in her voice. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Omar smiled, "and never let anyone make you feel small again." Amira's hands trembled slightly as she accepted the offer. "Yes, Sheikh Omar, I would be honored." A proud smile tugged at the corners of his lips. "Good. Then from this moment, you are no longer a cleaning lady. You are my official translator." The silence that followed was deafening. Every executive, every assistant in the room froze in disbelief. Mr. Grant's face turned a sickly shade of red. As the Sheikh signed the new contract, he added calmly, "And as for your company, Mr. Grant, consider your partnership with me terminated." Mr. Grant jolted forward. "What? Sheikh, wait! This deal means millions! You can't just walk away!" Omar didn't even look at him. "I can rebuild money, but I do not rebuild respect once it's broken." Al-Bagard stepped closer to the stunned CEO, and with a wave of the Sheikh's hand, they escorted him out of his own conference room. Amira watched, speechless. She couldn't believe what had just unfolded before her eyes. One moment she was scrubbing floors, the next she stood beside the most powerful man in the room. As the doors closed behind Mr. Grant, Omar turned to her and said softly, "Come, Amira. You've spent enough time in the shadows. It's time the world saw your light." Tears glimmered in her eyes. "You don't even know me, sir. Why are you doing this?" Omar looked thoughtful for a moment. "Because once someone gave me a chance when I was invisible too." The Sheikh's car glided through the city lights like a silent shadow. Amira sat in the back seat beside him, her cleaning uniform still faintly dusted with detergent stains. She kept fidgeting with her fingers, unsure if this was all real. Omar glanced at her reflection in the tinted window. "You look nervous." She hesitated, then whispered, "I don't belong in your world, Sheikh. I was just a maid." He smiled faintly. "Titles are illusions, Amira. Character isn't." They arrived at a marble estate, pillars of white stone rising into the night sky. Inside, a long table awaited with books, scrolls, and documents in Arabic, French, and English. "Sit," Omar said kindly. "I want to see how well you translate when there's no one belittling you." Amira sat, her hands trembling slightly, and began to read aloud, switching seamlessly between languages. Her voice grew steadier with each line, confidence blossoming where fear once lived. After an hour, Omar leaned forward, utterly captivated. "Your father must have been remarkable," he said softly. Amira's smile faltered. "He was. But after he passed, no one wanted a black woman with an accent, so I cleaned floors instead." Omar's jaw tightened. Then the world was blind. He stood and placed a small velvet box on the table. "You'll start work tomorrow. But before that, one more thing." She opened the box and gasped. Inside was a gold badge engraved in Arabic, interpreter to Sheikh Omar Al-Karim. Her eyes shimmered. This is real?" He smiled. "As real as your worth." The next morning the once-forgotten maid walked into the Sheikh's corporate tower. No mop, no cleaning cart, just quiet poise and a gleam of new purpose. The golden badge on her chest caught the light as heads turned and whispers followed. "Bruh, is that Amira?" one employee gasped. "Sheikh Omar's translator?" Even the senior managers stood straighter as she passed, uncertain how to greet her now. When she entered the top-floor conference room, Omar was already there, sipping Arabic coffee. "Ah, Miss Amira," he said warmly. "Right on time." She smiled, bowing her head slightly. "Always early, Sheikh." Mr. Grant, the former CEO, happened to be in the lobby that same moment, packing up his things, humiliation etched into every movement. Through the glass walls, he saw Amira standing beside the sheikh, explaining a document in fluent Arabic. The sight cut deep, a reminder of how arrogance had cost him everything. Upstairs, Omar listened as Amira translated for a group of visiting investors. Her confidence was effortless now, her tone dignified, her eyes calm and knowing. When the meeting ended, one of the investors said quietly to Omar, "You are lucky to have her. She's rare." Omar replied, "No, my friend, the world is full of people like her. We just never look low enough to see them." Later that evening, as Amira stepped out onto the terrace, a soft breeze carried the call to prayer through the air. For the first time in years, she felt whole, not because of a title, but because someone finally saw her for who she truly was. A week later, the sheikh hosted a formal gala at his estate, an evening to honor his new business partners and celebrate a milestone project. Crystal chandeliers glimmered, violins hummed softly, and the air was thick with luxury. When Amira arrived, heads turned. She wasn't in a maid's uniform this time. She wore an elegant, modest gown of deep emerald green, her hair tied back simply. The golden badge gleamed proudly at her side. Omar greeted her at the entrance. "You clean up well, Miss Amira," he said with a teasing smile. She laughed softly. "Better than I cleaned your floors, I hope." He chuckled. "Infinitely better." As the evening unfolded, Omar called for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his deep voice commanding the room. "Tonight, I wish to acknowledge someone who reminded me of something money often makes us forget: humility." The spotlight shifted to Amira. Murmurs rippled across the crowd. "This woman," Omar continued, "was once ignored, dismissed, and humiliated under this very roof. Yet when the moment came, she rose above all of us, with grace, with intelligence, and with heart. She is proof that true class cannot be bought." The hall erupted in applause. Amira blinked back tears, humbled and overwhelmed. After the event, she stood alone on the terrace under a sky full of stars. Omar joined her quietly. "You know, Amira," he said softly, "you didn't just translate my words. You translated something far greater, the value of human dignity." She smiled. "And you reminded me that power isn't always cruel." They stood in silence, side by side, two souls from different worlds bound by the same truth. True wealth is not measured in the weight of gold or the shine of diamonds. It lives quietly in the way we treat those who have nothing to give us in return. Power is not in the hand that commands, but in the heart that understands. We live in a world obsessed with titles, luxury, and image. Yet the most extraordinary stories are written by people who were once invisible. Amira's story reminds us that dignity has no price tag, that grace cannot be manufactured, and that true class begins where arrogance ends. Every person you overlook might be carrying a lifetime of knowledge, a heart full of resilience, and a story that could change yours forever. The janitor, the maid, the driver, the waiter. Behind every humble uniform is a universe of dreams and sacrifices. The measure of a person's worth isn't found in what they wear or where they live, but in what they give, how they endure, and how they lift others even while walking through storms themselves. When Sheikh Omar saw Amira, he didn't just see a translator. He saw the quiet miracle of humanity, the power of someone who refuses to be broken by the world's cruelty. And when Amira stood tall, she didn't just prove herself. She reminded everyone that respect, once given freely, transforms both the giver and the receiver. Kindness is not weakness. Humility is not submission. and compassion, when wielded with strength, can rebuild worlds that money alone could never touch. So the next time you meet someone society calls less, pause, look deeper, because perhaps, in that moment, life is giving you the chance to see real greatness before anyone else does. In the end, wealth fades, power shifts, and beauty ages, but the legacy of how we treat others endures beyond time. It echoes in every life we touch, in every soul we uplift. That is the true inheritance of humanity. Hebrew, be the one who listens, be the one who respects, be the one who sees, because sometimes the person cleaning your floor might be the one destined to teach you how to walk on it with grace.